Everyone, good afternoon to the Center for Social and Economic Progress. My name is Constantino Xavier. I'm a senior fellow here in the Foreign Policy Studies program. Good to see you all. I think we're joined by a few hundred people online. So this is a hybrid event, but special welcome to those who braved the rains and are here with us in the audience. You probably think we're a bit mad to be discussing Pakistan when the discussion is focused on the Eastern Front, Bangladesh. I see Suhasini and Raja, you're already exchanging punches on what's happening on what the Americans are up to, the Chinese and the Russians, everyone. It's a wonderful story in Bangladesh for everyone. I think everyone's taking what they want out of it. But at CSEP, we actually like to be a little bit behind the curve sometimes and look at things a little bit deeper. And the piece that Sanjay Kathuria, who's our senior visiting fellow here at CSEP, is bringing to us today and is sort of bringing us together to discuss is on Pakistan and the missing economic logic in Pakistan. So thank you, Sanjay, for bringing this piece for us. It's published by the United States Institute of Peace. And it has an argument on what should be driving Pakistan to develop an economic logic of integration with India. Today, we'll be discussing whether and what the Indian logic should be in engaging Pakistan on economic terms. Maybe the larger part of the piece is mapping what you've done for years as a champion of South Asian regional integration, Sanjay, which is mapping the missed opportunities or the costs of a very weak economic relationship. You've done that. But actually, the most interesting part I took out, and I hope we discuss that today more, is what you identify as a window of opportunity. You say the next few months have in front of us. There are a variety of reasons on both sides that open up the possibility for a revival there. I'm sure there are many views on this. I have my own. I'm sure the discussants have their own view. And let us focus that discussion on that. But let me also welcome then our three discussants who've joined us here today. Suhasini Haidar from The Hindu, diplomatic editor. Suhasini, it's great to have you here back. If you don't watch Suhasini's regular weekly podcasts, they're a must. To go beyond the noise and the clutter in terms of understanding what's happening on what we call the foreign policy beat. A lot of it, you don't report, Suhasini, we know you'll learn more. So please tell us more about the background, also what's happening there. Happymon Jacob, Professor Happymon Jacob from JNU, my alma mater. You're one of the responsible people for bringing me to India.
I take the blame.
We were skiing in Norway 20 years ago, and he said, come to JNU, the best place in the world. And I came.
I wasn't wrong. I wasn't wrong then.
But most importantly, Happy, as he's known and a friend to us, has done phenomenal work on the line of actual control. 2 books, The Line of Control, where you travel with the Indian and Pakistani armies looking at the line of control, but also your other book, which is Line of Fire and the Violation of Ceasefires. So thank you for being here, Happy. And finally, another person responsible for bringing me to India, Dr. Raja Mohan. I wouldn't be here also if you hadn't called me in to Delhi after I finished my PhD in 2016. Thank you, Raja, for being here and sharing also with you your wisdom and your thoughts on Pakistan. So what we'll do is we'll have Sanjay, you present. We do the 30-30-30 rule, right, Lavish? I think, Sanjay, you want less, you want 20 minutes, but then we'll have a conversation with the discussants and we'll open it up for a Q&A. Thank you.
So you lost questions, so conversation.
Yeah, I think
that's better than speeches. Yeah.
So thank you very much, Tino. It's great to be here, and I'm very happy that we've managed to provoke a discussion on Pakistan. And we're very happy for Happymon, Suhasini, and Raj to have accepted our invitation. So I obviously want to be provocative, but whatever I'm saying is grounded in reality and fact. I'm an economist, and of course, but I have been interacting with our friends here for many years. So I hope we will have some common ground. So my plan today is to focus on some myths in India's Pakistan economic relations. So the US-IP piece has both sides of the debate. Why is it in the interest of both India and Pakistan to engage? But today, I'm going to present more from an India perspective. This is not advancing here. Okay. So I'm focusing on India's interest. Okay. Now, anybody with Trade 101 will know that whenever your smaller country engages with a larger country, in theory, the smaller country gains very substantially, much more once they get their act together in terms of competitiveness, because they've obviously got a much bigger market, they can get access to technology and all of that. So, and I have documented that amply, that Pakistan's gains, in fact, they could almost be game-changing if they were to embrace an economic engagement fully with India. I had I think a last year piece on foreign policy on focusing on why Pakistan, it was called Pakistan's missing market. Okay, but so I'm not talking today of Pakistan because seems to be accepted in Pakistan today that they should engage with India. Question is, how is the ice to be broken? But today I want to submit to you that India's gains are also very significant. They are by no means trivial, and both on the economic plane and the strategic plane. And that is why we should be engaging and not ignoring. Okay, myth number one, that Pakistan's trade is of no interest to India. Okay, so we know that Pakistan has banned imports from India, right? But despite this ban, in the fiscal year just concluded, our exports to Pakistan were $1.2 billion, official statistics of India. In our previous work, when I was at the World Bank Glass Half Full, we could say that, and this was a gross underestimate, India's exports could be 10x of what they were in normal times, right? So, 1.8 billion was somewhere around the peak we achieved. There could have been 18 billion. And that was 2015 data. So you can extrapolate and, you can multiply that. There's a lot of informal trade. There's a trade that goes via Dubai. There's trade that goes via Singapore. All of that shows you there is huge pent-up demand for trade. Now, how do we, based in another kind of realities, look at Bangladesh, notwithstanding all the other issues around Bangladesh, but as an economy, Bangladesh has been at one time a top 4 market for India and currently a top 10 market for India. And the reason why it's gone down a bit because they've had some economic troubles in the last 2 years post the Russian invasion of Ukraine after that. But before that, it was a top 4 market. Pakistan is 230 million, Bangladesh 170 million people. So there is potentially a very large market out there. So let's not say that we can completely, even from a pure export mercantilist interest point of view, Pakistan cannot be ignored. Myth number 2 is, in a similar vein, Pakistan's services market is of no interest to India. Okay. Now, this may be the biggest myth of all. Why? Because the tourism market is limited only by our own constraints, our imposed constraints. May I ask this audience, not our experts here, would anybody know who is India's largest provider of tourists? Bangladesh. 20%, as per the latest data, of our tourists come from Bangladesh, right? This is the first 4 months of 24 before the upheaval. They come. So they are the largest market for Indian tourism. Medical tourism, again, they are the biggest by far users of Indian medical tourist facilities. So imagine this is happening with a country which is smaller in size and population. Imagine if we opened up. The two-way flow of tourism would be humongous. And let me also say, terrorists do not take visas. I just want to add that. Medical tourism between Pakistan and India, it happens in a small way, right? It's humanitarian basis again, but there could be enormous possibilities of medical tourism. There have been some exchanges between hospitals, where you have the first stage of a medical tourist is screened there and then sent to India and all of that. So, but the possibilities are huge. They have very good, very highly skilled doctors. So there are possibilities of fruitful services exchange. Cultural tourism, we know that it's already the Kartarpur Sahib still works, still operates despite all the problems. So that's a small part of, again, what could be cultural and religious tourism. So, and we could have a collaboration in medical services, professional services. So that's the second myth. The third myth is that sub-regional South Asia works just fine. Thank you very much. So the implication is we neglect Pakistan, right? This is the reality today. We neglect Pakistan, by extension Afghanistan. And so we focus on BBINS and BIMSTEC, Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Nepal, Sri Lanka, and BIMSTEC, and so on, and bilaterals. And we're fine. By ignoring them, we're fine. We're progressing. We're going to have free trade agreements and all of that. And which is all very well in itself. I'm not knocking these. They have a logic. And, there is a Bay of Bengal is a very important growth pole as he's pushed quite a bit. But, that argument is an independent one. The current approach neglects the very significant benefit of bringing Pakistan and Afghanistan into the economic cooperation sphere with the larger South Asian entities. So give just a couple of small examples. So the East-West connectivity, right? The East-West connectivity is something that we lose out on, right? So the old Silk Roads, the mutual access and all of that. So, for example, we could be thinking of resurrecting the old Grand Trunk Road, right? So we could go all the way from Kabul to Chittagong, right? Now, that's not happening currently because right now there is no transit even between India and Afghanistan, right? So Afghan trucks can come to India, but Indian goods cannot go to Afghanistan, or rather Afghan exports can come to India via land, but Indian exports cannot. So that's a very small example, right? So there is a broader issue of the opening up the East-West connectivity, the old Silk Road regime. And for that, you need efficient transit between all our countries. There is a second aspect of economic cooperation, which is locked out by our approach to Pakistan and Afghanistan, is the regional energy market, the CASA. The Central Asia, South Asia Regional Energy Market was, I don't know if it was coined by the World Bank, but it was a term we used a lot in the World Bank, CASA-REM, the Central Asia, South Asia Regional Energy Market, exploiting the very rich hydro potential of Central Asian countries and using, and then transmitting them through power lines, transmission lines, all the way to Afghanistan, Pakistan, and then further into India and beyond. So this was a visionary thinking here. And there is currently a Central Asia, South Asia pipeline in implementation where power is going to be coming from Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan into Afghanistan and Pakistan. This is the so-called CASA 1000. This is a World Bank project. Took 10 years to prepare. It's tough, but it went to the board and it is currently, despite all the problems of Afghanistan, I am told it is still under preparation and it's closer to completion. So there is a regional energy market with enormous potential just in Pakistan, Afghanistan alone of hydropower, which can be used with all its salutary benefits. The third element that I want to talk about is cooperation in climate and environment, right? And here we are talking of two very large land entities in Pakistan and Afghanistan, and we have shared geography and topography, right? So there are a lot of benefits. So for example, river management, we know about the Indus Waters Treaty, but this is much more than just that, right? We can talk about, yes, river management systems. We can talk about sharing knowledge, say, for example, drought-resistant crops. You can work on that. You can work on pooling insurance. Insurance pooling, the more countries, we have disasters, we know. Disasters are striking us. South Asia is very prone to disasters, right? Heat waves, earthquakes, rain, and so on, flooding. So when you have a system of pooling in the financial market, the more, as we know from medical, the more people that participate in a market, the more viable the insurance scheme becomes. So, and we did this when I was in the World Bank for the Caribbean. Took a long while, but the Caribbean, once all the islands got together, then we had what we called a catastrophic risk insurance market came into being for the Caribbean. So if we can get more countries in, the chances of having a pooled insurance, right, for the to take care of catastrophes, at least the aftermath of catastrophe, is much more likely. So pooling of insurance is very important. And then early warning systems. I don't have to say more about that. There is a lot that can be done. And beyond, right? For bulk cargo, Chabahar may be fine. This is where, some of you may know that India is pushing this port in Iran for access to Afghanistan and beyond, to Central Asia and to the north. But for regular truckloads, container loads, you cannot beat the cost and efficiency of Wagah, Lahore, Peshawar, Torkham, Kabul and beyond. That's the normal, it's the most cost efficient route. It would take, I don't have real solid data on this, but some casual back of the envelope stuff, I'm talking about 7 to 10 days time wise versus 15 to 20 days. So I think we should not think that we will be able to mimic the land route by going via. There are very significant time and efficiency costs to the sea route. And we go back again to the vision of the old Silk Route. Myth number 5, trade has never helped the cause of India-Pakistan peace. Okay. Fact is, it has never been allowed to. And why do I say that? Yes, because Pakistan has been extremely wary of competition from India, right? And its industry, and in the past, when it, in the early between 2010 to 2013, there were 3 times when they almost signed on the dotted line to allow most favored nation imports from India. That means normal business transactions with India. But it was stymied at each stage because of lobbies. But Pakistan business seems to be ready now. They're talking more and more about it, and they're talking it's too costly for us to bring stuff via Dubai, which is happening now. It's too expensive. Let's start trading with India. And then if we want to do that, there are agreements in 2011, 2012. Those can be dusted off the shelves. And as I said earlier, when you have trade agreements, maybe I didn't say it earlier, there is a concept of asymmetric liberalization. So Pakistan's concerns that they will, their industry will be wiped out can be met through an asymmetric trade agreement, as India has done with every neighbor. India-Sri Lanka is an asymmetric trade agreement. India is opening its market to all the other least developed countries is an asymmetric liberalization. All large countries do asymmetric trade liberalization so that they gain the confidence. And in time, after 10 years, 15 years, there is fuller trade liberalization. And indeed, India was doing asymmetric trade liberalization already with Pakistan by providing MFN treatment in, I think, 1996. And it was not reciprocated till trade relations were cut off in 2019. So I think India will be more than willing to go that asymmetric route. By the way, Pakistan has a free trade agreement with the most powerful exporting country in the world, China. So we used to tell Pakistan, what are you worried about in India? Forget about FTA. We're not even talking about an FTA. It's just talking about letting India come in, Indian imports come in at the same rates of duty as you give to the rest of the world. And there were hesitation about it. But I believe things have changed, timings have changed. So the point of making all of this, and the headline that I've said is put there, that if trade is really allowed to grow to where it should be, where it could be, that's when you start talking of trade and peace. That's when you get into business, when you have such a large lobby created on both sides that it becomes material. There is injury. If there is any form of hostility, then the material injury is significant. And that's when trade and peace wallahs come into business, right? So I think in my book, this trade has never been given a chance. to play its role. And I think it's time that it should be allowed to. And I'll tell you, and that will be my last myth. The status quo on the border will continue to prevail. That's myth number 6, right? So we've had a fragile border truce for 3 years, right? Will it last forever? You're seeing growing skirmishes. We've seen evidence of that. I don't need to tell you. So how can we improve chances of lasting peace? Engage via trade and economic cooperation. And what are the gains for people in India, right? So I want to come down to that, and as I'm nearing my closing, one is the quality of jobs. We always say trade. The quality of jobs is very significant in the trading sector compared to the same job in a domestic manufacturing sector. There is plenty of superb evidence of that. So the export sector jobs are better. They employ more women. Okay, and of course, if you're talking of multiple 10x times, in the case of Pakistan, it will be 36x times their exports. Obviously, a huge number of jobs are going to be created. And let's not forget in all of this that even as we have this uneasy truce, the cost to the people in the borderlands, right? The people who actually live on the borderlands, who nobody talks about very much except some amazing documentaries, and which I can point you to if you're interested. There is a very high cost to people on the border economies. And just a small example, there's a study by our friends here in Brief. Sakib was here, and his colleague Nikita and Afaq have done this study on the cost to the families in Amritsar of breaking off trade with Pakistan. So there were 10,000 odd families who've lost their livelihoods, right? And similarly, if you talk of LOC trade across the two Kashmirs, it's a similar kind of thing. So there is a very high cost. So that's the economic part. And then, of course, there's one more, the strategic gains, that should you secure one border, then you can focus on your other more troublesome border. And that's true for both countries, by the way. It's true for India for sure, but we know it's also true for Pakistan. They would both rather have a quiet border, right? Because the other borders today are actually giving them more headaches. So there's strategic gains for India from all of these economic arguments that I'm making. So my implications are engage, engage, engage. What's the harm in trying? What has the alternative got us to? We've tried for 75 years. Now, as I said earlier, Pakistan actually believes, at least many influential people in Pakistan believe, that Pakistan has made many calls to India to engage. Shahbaz Sharif, the Prime Minister, has made, Ishaq Dhar, the deputy, has made, and others, business has. So there has been, they believe they have made, I'm not sure whether they've done the formal one, but they have made open public calls, right, for engagement. And they believe there has been no response. Editorials have pointed out that India has been silent on this. Hopefully some back channels are active. But so my point here is that a foreign policy that is aligned with the self-interest, our Indian self-interest of development, should lead India in the very clear direction of engagement. That's what, it cannot be anything else. And the alternative is really a very volatile and costly relationship with violence and human costs, and a very topsy-turvy and a turbulent, I don't need to tell you all of that. And as I said earlier, there is a roadmap of trade engagement. It exists. It can be elaborated upon. I've written briefly about it in the past, and I'm happy to talk more about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sanjay, for that. As always, I think you spoke like a champion, because you've been a champion of regional integration. I think you've laid out quite clearly what is not a difficult sell, which is India has its neighbor to the west, a country which is the 5th largest country in the world by population, 230 million people. huge market from an economic perspective makes pretty sense. What I think we can discuss a little bit more is this a window to make this happen? Because the definition of madness is, Sanjay, is you keep doing the same things and they don't work out. So looking at your recommendations at the end, in fact, do look at the paper, which has 5 very concrete suggestions, and maybe we can end also discussion with that, which is what can be done. Border huts, you speak of border huts, you speak about most favored nation status, you speak about business constituencies, engaging them. A lot of this has been tried in the past, like you mentioned. Right? So what is it that now you think, and we think maybe, or not, makes this difference? And B, what would be more of these steps beyond the 5 that at least Sanjay brings to us in this paper? So Suhasini, I saw you nodding a lot at the beginning when Sanjay was making his case. You've been involved over the years in track 1.5 dialogue between India and Pakistan. Maybe we can also discuss it a bit later, why those have disappeared or they're less of. Yeah, I'm looking at Happy too. So what is taking less to Bangkok these days?
The last,
So tell me, do you think the time has come?
Look, I'll put it this way. Firstly, I wear my heart on my sleeve when I talk about South Asia. One is an extension of the other. Continuing to believe that we can cut off ties with Pakistan, ignore its existence, and not work with them, and they can do the same for us, is essentially driving a stake through the heart of an idea called South Asia. Now, some might feel that idea itself is irrelevant and non-existent almost. There is no South Asian identity. There is no South Asian, anything holding it together, no center of gravity. I beg to differ simply by experience and anecdotal evidence of traveling to every country in the region. So I do think South Asia exists. I think there's a definite historical, geographical, cultural identity that exists, societal identity that exists, that bring together the 8 countries that form the SAARC, and maybe Myanmar in a future time, although Myanmar did become a part of ASEAN. For decades, we also have always heard this kind of binary, which is that those who spoke for engagement between India and Pakistan, and as a result spoke about the idea of South Asia, were in some way ideological. They were, as you said, peaceniks, Mombatti walas. You'll see some of those Mombatti walas on the 14th of August, make their way to Wagah and see each other with candles across the border. And the idea was that the realists, the realpolitik, the pragmatists, all understood that India and Pakistan can never really make it, that there will always be, a bomb blast from Pakistan that will torpedo any process. And on the Pakistani side, there was the feeling that until Kashmir is resolved, it doesn't matter what you discuss with India. It's, that is front and center to the thing. So this whole preamble I'm giving you is because you asked what has changed. I must compliment Dr. Kathuria for his piece, because he seems almost decidedly oblivious of the political scenario. And I like that, because eventually my case is that the realist, the realpolitik, the logic, as he called it, of the economic ties with Pakistan is actually with those who believe engagement is necessary. To deny the existence of Pakistan, to deny the existence of South Asia is almost ideological. It's almost as if it's people on the Indian side and the Pakistani side who think, that we should not have anything to do with each other because of our ideology. And he makes 4 cases. So I'll just add on those. He says, opportunity and timing is now. It's 5 years post 2019, Jammu Kashmir, whatever's the reality there. The new governments in both countries this year, they've made some noises on the Pakistani side. He talks about potential, he talks about the environment, and he makes a very important point that right now, both India and Pakistan have much worse problems on other borders than they do with each other. They actually have a 3-year ceasefire in place, and they've got real problems on their other borders. And then he talks about the practicality, very importantly. He says, dust off those documents of 2011, 2012 that spoke about economic liberalization, trade liberalization between India and Pakistan. And Happymon and I actually listened to the commerce minister at the time, Khurram Dastgir, who actually spoke about the reality of those documents. So I'll just add to them and say the time is not now, the time has really passed for the ideal point, simply because it's not about the troubles we've had with each other. It's about all our future problems. Look at what India and Pakistan and South Asia have to deal in the future. Climate change and pollution, there is no non-regional solution, or it's very inefficient. Pollution in particular, air pollution and that sort of thing. Food security, fertilizer security, fuel security, all of these can be better negotiated as a South Asian grouping rather than single countries jockeying with each other. There's another opportunity there. Clean energy, he spoke about the fact that, until we actually build real massive batteries and all, renewables are just going to need new markets. And we're at that position. And the final I'd like to end with that, because obviously we all are consumed with what's happening in Bangladesh. What we are learning from Bangladesh, apart from everything else, and you'll see a lot of articles just titled, lessons to be learned. And I think the thing we are learning is that the future is going to see conflict, and we are going to have to find our futures around it. So in other words, if you are able to say, I have a conflict with Pakistan, so therefore no connectivity there. What are you going to do if you don't get on with this new government in Bangladesh? Is BIMSTEC, BBI, and as he said, going to go out the window? What is going to happen to IMEC if Israel cannot work it out with its Arab neighbors? What is going to happen to INSTC and Chabahar if the Americans continue to sanction Iran and Russia in the way they do? What's going to happen to the Chennai-Vladivostok corridor? So all I'm saying is, if we think connectivity is our future, and the government certainly makes connectivity a part of everything they do, then what are you planning to do if conflict gets in the way? You work around it. And therefore, it is imperative to also work around the India-Pakistan problem in order to build some kind of a sense of South Asian connectivity for all the reasons that Dr. Kathuria has mentioned, and for the extra reason where I will leave it to the audience to figure out which is the more pragmatic and realistic point of view, and which one is actually a bit of dogma.
So Suhasini, let me follow up on that a little bit, because you've seen this movie play out many times
Sure.
in your career. Raja, you've seen it a few more times.
Older.
But Suhasini, I think I was reading Prem Shankar Jha, written in 86, in a
Yes.
book called India and Its Neighborhood by Uma Shankar Bajpai. In fact, that's also a brilliant article by Subramanian on Pakistan. But Prem Shankar Jha says something interesting. It's not so much about engaging or not engaging. It's 86. He's saying it is about how, when we engage. For example, one solution forwards, you speak to that a little bit, is sequencing. What is doable and pragmatic, what is not? So for example, he actually says trade is a very difficult politicized issue. Work on the ecosystem, climate, technocratic, technical issues. I was reading Shiv Shankar Menon, Choices. He's actually saying Pakistan is a lost case. 2015 in his book.
I think Shamsaran says it too.
He's saying, for example, that the difficulty is that the motives for India to engage with Pakistan are smaller than ever today. We're losing the generation of Indians that even believe what you portrayed out very logically, that is a future of a region that should be together. So again, what is today, what is it making different? What do you think, or why is, let's put it the opposite. Why do you think that the government is not seeing
The logic of
Yeah, or is it doing it maybe? We'll come to Happymon, who knows the back channels very well. But what do you think is not happening?
I think essentially most are frightened by the past. I think they are completely aware of the history, which is that you reach out and something blows up. I mean, that's in short, in a nutshell, that is the past of the India-Pakistan conversation. I think as a result, they have become so risk averse that they are not willing. Look at what we've been able to do with India and Bangladesh. I mean, I can remember a survey done in 2006 by my company at the time, CNN-IBN, where they went around asking Indians, which is the neighbor you trust the most, which is the neighbor you trust the least. And I can tell you at the top of that chart of trust the least was Bangladesh, not Pakistan. Remember what it was. Remember how one leader walked in, and while I know that there are problems with Sheikh Hasina today, but she walked in, shut down terror camps, handed over most wanted, cracked down on radicalization, and changed it. So the idea that we can't even now allow ourselves to imagine is a bit problematic. I think it's ideological. I think this is a government that has decided that it speaks only for one religion and has said it again and again, that it is concerned about the only one community in another country. And I think the Pakistani side and the Bangladeshi side have seen their most extremists react to that kind of understanding of our societies. And I keep saying this, that in South Asia, there is no country that does not have one massive majority and then the rest are minorities. So spillover effect is huge of what happens in one country and what happens in another. And I think that somewhere there is this idea of what Dr. Kathuria said is, so what? We don't talk to them, it doesn't matter. South Asia goes away, nobody cares about it anyway. I ask you to look at the scenario between India and Pakistan today, which I think is actually quite funny. We don't have any political level conversations. We don't have any real back channel. We don't, I mean, at the top level, we don't have trade, zero trade, or what the 1.2 billion is really is because Pakistan wanted some pharmacies and that sort of pharma products and that sort of thing. We don't have even the basic exchange of culture. And Abida Parveen can no longer perform in India. Indian stars though don't, I mean, even though they're very popular across the border, they can never go there. When somebody does go across to a literature festival, they're so badly booed when they come back. In fact, RIP to your mentions, Dr. Kathuria, after everything you've said over here. So what I'm trying to say is that there's just a closing of the mind. And if we were able to get out of this real fear we have that, oh God, no politician has survived the kiss of death that is trying to improve India-Pakistan ties. I think that's what causes the inertia.
So you disagree with Sanjay, there's no window in your thinking?
I'm not saying there's no window. I'm just saying that the window always exists. At what point can anything that Sanjay said not have been said 20 years ago or 30 years ago? Maybe except the renewable energy stuff, which we weren't looking so closely at. But I don't think the window ever does not exist. It's there for somebody to pick and not if not. I mean, if you look at some of the papers we've seen in the past, we seemed so much more futuristic. There's a South Asian Union paper that was given to the SAARC in 2010, I think, at the Maldives.
Monetary.
There's one on the monetary union. There's the India-Pakistan trade ones. So I think we've actually been capable of much more imagination than we give ourselves credit for today, where, frankly, except for cricket, and that's really because of the international compulsions, there's no such thing as one side easily able to go over to the other.
Absolutely. You can see it also in academia, think tanks, who's
Journalists.
specializing on Pakistan, who's reporting on it. But Happy, coming to you, what do we not know about backtrack channels, right? You've written some of this post-2019. Sometimes we don't know about everything, right? Maybe is there a line now? Are things being discussed? Or is it zero and a record zero, which Suhasini seems to suggest that it's really bad and has never been that bad, at least in the last 20 years?
Thank you, Tino, for having me, and Sanjay, fantastic paper. Great reflections, great recommendations. I love them all. I'm a convert, don't take me wrong. Just that I certainly want to see trade between India and Pakistan, but I don't think it's happening anytime soon. On the question of window, I don't think there exists a window today. I want to start with what where Sanjay ended, which is there is a strategic gain in trading with Pakistan, in normalizing trade relations with Pakistan, because if you were to calm one border, you can focus on the other. I mean, or other issues. I completely agree. But the problem, I think, is that New Delhi believes that it has achieved calm, a relative calm on the Pakistan border with Pakistan, and it does not want to go back and destroy that. Let me explain why I think what I am saying. If you were to look at the current state of India-Pakistan relations, which I call the age of minimalism, and let me tell you what I mean by the age of minimalism. You're talking about the interlocutors on both sides, Indian and Pakistani sides, adopting a very clinical and let's say surgical approach to the relationship. They only want to talk about issues that require urgent attention and nothing else. You're talking about conflict management with a little focus on conflict resolution. Involvement of the two deep states. The Indian deep state is talking to the Pakistani deep state. These conversations are carrying out messaging about the red lines, about what is possible, about expectation management, about border management, etc., etc. That is the state of play as far as India-Pakistan relationship is concerned today. Now, this state of play gives us two competing and compelling templates for understanding India-Pakistan relationship. One is the one that started in 2004 and unfortunately ended in 2008. What did we have? We had a lot of high-profile visits to both sides. You had a comprehensive dialogue between the two sides. Media was involved, people-to-people cooperation, all the good things that Suhasini spoke about, and some of us are part of this journeys back and forth. It ended in a disaster. First, the Kabul bomb attacks, and then the Mumbai terror attacks. The second format, the first format, unfortunately, did not lead to anything substantive, as it were. The second format, 2021 onwards up until today. The second format is more clinical. It is more specific. It is need to. This is nothing to do with the political principles in charge in New Delhi and in Islamabad. This is between the deep states. This, in some ways, is a very minimalist approach. No media, no peace process, no big expectations, nothing of the kind. That is the template from 2021 until today. This, unfortunately, is the new normal. Now, if this is a new normal, I don't think Delhi has any incentive to change this new normal. I think one of the key outcomes of the relationship based on the second template from 21 to 24 is the growing belief in Delhi that the minimalist relationship itself may have led to the current calm in the relationship. That we are not talking about a big relationship. It's not a huge. People are not going back and forth. There are no visas given. There's no trade, no high commissioners, no nothing. So that itself may have led to the current calm in the relationship is, I think, the sort of thinking in Delhi. So if the Indian policymakers believe that there is relative calm because of minimalist engagement, they would conclude that there are hardly any incentives for restarting trade or a dialogue process. Why do you do that? Because in such an imagination, the economic loss from no trade with Pakistan is less costly than getting into a broad-based dialogue process with Pakistan, which may lead nowhere and may have unforeseen security costs based on past experience, the point that you made earlier. So it may also lead to, if you get into a peace process with Pakistan, it may also lead to more expectations from Pakistan. Now, many of the recent track 2 meetings that we attended with the Pakistani side, the Indians have actually pushed for trade. The Pakistani side says, no, we don't want conflict management with you. We want conflict resolution with you, meaning you want trade, we want to talk about Kashmir. I don't think the Indian side is ready to talk about Kashmir. That is the, I think, second problem. I agree with Sanjay that no trade has its opportunity cost. Absolutely. However, I think the loss in Delhi's mind, the way I interpret it, the loss from non-trade is notional in many ways. Right? Okay, we didn't have trade, therefore we don't have it. That's notional. Whereas there may be tangible losses if trade goes disrupted or called off or is linked to other geopolitical issues. Trade with Pakistan is susceptible to be disrupted. It has happened in the past. In particular, I think there is a potential dependence on such trade. And if the trade is disrupted, dependence can actually cost you. For example, you talk about TAPI pipeline or IPI pipeline. If you have that pipeline, and if tomorrow there's a disruption, you wouldn't have energy security issues. So there are going to be, I think, more losses from such dependence than the tangible benefits of not trading with Pakistan. I think that seems to be the calculation in Delhi. But let me come back very quickly. I'll take 1.5 minutes more to the issue of the lack of incentives. I think it is possible then to argue that Delhi has no incentives in reopening trade with Pakistan, as it believes that it has gained more from general non-engagement with Pakistan than from an engagement with Pakistan. I don't think even Pakistan, as I said earlier, wants to get into a trading relationship with India on the Wagah-Atari border without actually picking up some of the other issues, Siachen, Sir Creek, Kashmir, etc., etc. So in that sense, both Pakistan and India do not have any incentives to get into a trading arrangement for very different reasons, of course. So to conclude, what could change this calculation for India? I think there are two or three things that I think will change this sort of a logic or calculation for the Indian side. Number one, if you were to separate Kashmir and other political issues from trade, can you do that? I don't think that's happening. The Pakistanis would not want that. That's number one. Number two, can you have something bigger than just India-Pakistan trade? Something that, again, Sanjay pointed out. For example, if there were to be an opening to Central Asia via Afghanistan, I think the Indians may be more keen to trade with Pakistan if there is more than that, more than just India-Pakistan trade. And finally, can you have trading mechanisms that can survive security challenges between India and Pakistan? So, for example, if you have a pipeline and if the ADB or the World Bank and the others can sort of underwrite it or provide security guarantees, etc., etc., like the Indus Waters Treaty. Because the World Bank is involved and there are other things involved, neither side wants to sort of break it up. So the point that I'm trying to make is, I am completely in agreement that there should be trade. But, Sanjay ends in his conclusion, Sanjay ends with a very interesting statement. If trade is allowed to grow to its potential, it could also create openings to discuss other more contentious issues. That's precisely the problem. India does not want to discuss other contentious issues. I don't think we are ready for that. It's not me. I'm just sort of telling you my interpretation of what I see. Thank you.
Thanks, Happy, for laying out how you may think Delhi's thinking and what may be the incentives and disincentives to engage Pakistan. By the way, it's something that needs to be done also on research. Sanjay, we had this discussion, and in fact, we're launching a flagship paper by Ambassador Shiv Shankar Menon on Thursday, where he portrays sort of the future scenarios of Indian foreign policy. And we're talking about it, recording a podcast on Friday, and he was saying, if trade led to peace, we wouldn't have had 2 world wars, right? If trade led to peace, India and China today would have been wonderful friends and building an Asian unity platform against the West. If trade led to peace, the US and China would be very good. But that's a larger discussion, of course, that we have to have on quantifying the relationship between trade and peace. In fact, the evidence in political science suggests that when trade relations develop, that is when the irritants begin often, and the risk of conflict, the propensity increases dramatically. So that may be another reason why there is a aversion, and what Suhasini was trying to explain us, maybe in logical aversion or fear, you put it in that sense, of any risk of things blowing up. But I still want to understand also why Prime Minister Modi went in December 2014 to Pakistan, and why that beginning happened and derailed very quickly. Maybe we can come back to later. But just one last point, Happymon, to you on this is, we see what you're saying is that the politicians have left that you call the deep state, let's call it the security establishment, national security advisors, intelligence, the people who run this from a security perspective, are keeping a hotline, connecting with each other, keep things just below exploding or blowing up, right? And that works, sort of a weird status quo. Reminds me very much of Pallavi Raghavan's book, Animosity at Bay, where she's saying the early 50s, while politicians were, running riots in the streets, in the political language was one of war and conflict and kill each other, the bureaucrats in Eastern Pakistan were fleshing out agreements on water, on migration, on jointness in terms of management of flows, etc. So that's interesting, because basically it tells us the politicians are sort of delegating things to the bureaucrats. But on the civil society angle, I think we all agree it's collapsed. Stuti Bhatnagar has this wonderful book on India's Pakistan policy, where she maps the composite dialogue onwards, 2000s onwards. We reviewed it here at CSEP, on how the think tank engagement have collapsed. So civil society is absent. And it seems to me some are comfortable with that, some not. But let's talk more about that. Raja, coming to you, tell us what in your sense is the logic or illogical policy. Does this all make sense going forward? And above all, is there a window of opportunity?
So let me begin by saying, when you refer to something about 86, Prem Shankar Jha, actually, I mean, I can go a little beyond. Between 83 and 84, the India International Center organized a major discussion on reworking India's neighborhood policy. I was a young researcher. I mean, I was young at one point. 80, this is 83. I just joined IDSA. So I was the rapporteur taking notes for that meeting. So really, it's a deja vu. The idea that we need to transform our relationship with our neighbors. A lot has changed with all the other neighbors except Pakistan. And in fact, when Rajiv Gandhi took over, 84 December, a big effort was made to revive the relationship with Pakistan. And Benazir Bhutto came back to power. It was a big effort again. He went twice to Pakistan. Big hopes at the time. It all collapsed once the Kashmir unrest started in 89. So there is a deep recall if you take a look. So I wouldn't be too optimistic in relation to Pakistan. So I would say three problems with Sanjay's paper, and I would say, one, normally I don't agree with Suhasini, we always disagree, but I agree with her that, look, this is pure economics. There's no politics to it. Yeah. And nor is there an attempt to locate it in the negotiating record, which some of it Happymon pointed out, that there is a record that tells you why it didn't succeed. See, no one disagrees with the notion that trade is a good thing, and with all the problems we have with China, we're still talking trade. Trade has crossed 130 billion, and both sides want to find ways to actually go in spite of Kashmir. Probably have a territorial dispute. They're sitting on our territory. So I think the problem, that brings me to the second problem. I think the way Sanjay is framing it is a symmetric, India-Pakistan, be good boys, trade is good for you both. The problem is, Pakistan does not believe in it. So it's not a symmetric thing of India, Pakistan, guys, don't be stupid, trade. I think India has been open to trade. It is Pakistan which has a problem, which Happymon pointed out. So those of us who want to feel good about India-Pakistan trade, you are assuming things on behalf of Pakistan that don't exist. As a realist, I'm more respectful of Pakistan's strategic choices than merely saying, guys, we should be good. Because Pakistan has made a clear, unambiguous, unquestionable strategic choice that it would not trade with India bilaterally or multilaterally through SAARC unless the Kashmir question is resolved to its satisfaction. You can say it is stupid for Pakistan to do it, but I would say that's a choice they made. So you can take a horse to the water, but the horse does not want to drink from your well. They're willing to sign agreements which are today disastrous in turned out on CPET power projects, sovereign guarantees for dollar payment for power plants, which, I mean, they broke. You think that will change their policy towards India? I think we should, that's a choice they have to make. It is not something for us to make. So therefore, I would say on the question of India-Pakistan trade, that it is, they have taken a decision, and at this point, despite occasional efforts, 3 years ago, they talked about geoeconomics, our friend Mohid Yusuf and the national security strategy. Nawaz Sharif, after coming back, he said, look, we must trade with our neighbors. We must have good relationship with our neighbors. The Deputy Prime Minister, Ishaq Dar, who is related to Nawaz Sharif, says, traders want to trade, we should change the policy, and he got hammered down. So there are sections in Pakistan which want to trade, but the military is not ready to allow that kind of situation. Now, any realist will see this is the situation in Pakistan. It's not you to overcome that relationship, unless, of course, there is an argument you can make. India should give away Kashmir in order to facilitate trade. Or we should go out of the way to resolve the political issues to facilitate trade. But that, of course, is not going to happen. That doesn't mean Pakistan will not change. Maybe it will change someday, but we're not there yet. So I would say this talk actually should be given in Pakistan. That the missing economic link in Pakistan's worldview. That is not just with us. That they believed CPEC was a game changer, no due diligence, the agreements that they signed, because purely for geopolitical reasons. And it's for those geopolitical reasons, they don't want to trade with India. So therefore, this is something, and Pakistanis are debating it, but there is no closure on that argument. despite the fact that the PM and the Nawaz Sharif and the Deputy Prime Minister want to do it, there is no closure. And the record is long. I mean, many times we've tried to asymmetric trade. In FICCI made a whole detailed study of barriers, non-tariff barriers, and how they can front load their exports, we can backload our imports. All kinds of things were done. But politically, the issue is hanging fire in Pakistan. So therefore, I would say it's a talk that Pakistan should, next time, I hope you can get a chance to visit Pakistan. But I think it's a talk they need, but they themselves are debating it. But that doesn't mean I'm a pessimist. I mean, as a realist, but I'm not a pessimist. So I would say, are there things that India can do? I think there are three things at least India can do. One, India must think unilaterally. The idea the joint secretaries will sit and one day have an agreement on formal trade, that you can wait till the cows come home. But if you can trade through Dubai, why don't you trade? I would, in fact, I mean, I'm being set up in a Pakistan trade office in Dubai. You have a free trade agreement with them. Sell what you can to Pakistan, buy what you can. Through Dubai, what is stopping you? If Iran trades through Dubai to much of the world, why is it that you can't trade? So it's not a problem. It is the formalism which you're framing. But actually, there are avenues for expanding trade through third parties. Second, I would say that the unilateral strategy must also involve, I agree with some of the things the report says, liberalize the visas for businessmen at least today, how hard it is for them to come. I would say, instead of IPL, which is one of the great commercial successes, make it a South Asia league, get the Pakistani, Bangladeshi cricketers to play in India, you make even more money. BCCI can be the richest sporting organization in the world, have 20 teams competing for the IPL, or what do you call it, SAPL, shall we call it, South Asia Premier League. We'll keep South Asia there, or Subcontinent Premier League.
Yeah, that's
there are things you can do that through music, through culture, there are unilaterally India can do things. You don't have to negotiate this. There, I think, is where I would fully agree with Suhasini, that we've been a reciprocalist, we denying ourselves the advantage of larger possibilities for cooperation. So therefore, I would say there are things that we can do. I would say that we must take those things unilaterally rather than wait for a negotiated settlement on trade. Finally, on lessons from Bangladesh, if you say, Sheikh Hasina, one of the great things she did was to transcend the partition post-65, 71 disastrous militarization of South Asian borders. That by ending the securitization of South Asian borders, by addressing the question of terrorism, by opening trade routes across the 4,000-kilometer border, by facilitating river transport, she has broken through. Whatever her fate is over, but that is the way Pakistan has to go. Someday, Nawaz Sharif and his wisdom might prevail. On the day that happens, we will have, I think, a rational man or woman, if you will, at some point will prevail in Pakistan. And I think we should wait for that. And meanwhile, what we can do unilaterally, we should do it.
Raja, politically, again, your assessment on suggestions 2 and 3 that you make, is the time right for that? You predict that could happen?
On the visas.
For example, yes.
Yeah, I mean, what stops you? I mean, it's pure domestic politics that is stopping it. I mean, this government had a lot of strength to do what it wants to. And if you can show money to people who can have Pakistanis play here, after all, Rashid Khan has played here and become a global star, why not have Pakistani players play here? Or the music industry.
Visas?
I'm saying give visas.
Forget business people,
Yeah,
civil
absolutely.
society.
You give it unilaterally or meet them in Dubai, whichever way you want to get things done. If the objective is to trade, the objective is to make more money through trade, there are things you can do. You don't have to even sit down in a back channel or a front channel to negotiate with Pakistan. There are stroke of pen. You can do a lot of things if you're ready to do it.
And Raja, I was reading the book that you co-edited with Vivek Debroy and Ashley Tellis, Grasping India's Greatness. In your epilogue, you actually have a few things to say about Pakistan. You say, deal with Pakistan by persuading Pakistan, later on use the word confront Pakistan, through ways that are not through traditional political means. You list modernize India's conventional military forces, 2, more robust nuclear deterrent, 3, stronger partnership with the US and the West, including coordination with Pakistan, 4, increase costs for China to deal with Pakistan. And 5, capabilities to influence Pakistan domestically. If they have the power to meddle in Kashmir, you're saying India should also find non-conventional strategies to build its clout in Pakistan.
Look, that's a different debate. I mean, when we talk about terrorism, the need for deterrence. So the whole question on which you held back your cooperation is because the lack of deterrence. So dealing with that problem requires building conventional military capability, the modernization of nuclear capability, and giving visas and engaging Pakistani society, letting them come here. If a song Pasuri is one of the greatest hits in South Asia, if you can have the mothers of Arshad Nadeem and Neeraj Chopra can talk the right language, there is enormous goodwill out there. The question is, if I'm a strategist, what is my goal? My goal is to change the way India-Pakistan relate to each other. If that involves taking steps to reach out to sections within Pakistan, instead of getting stuck between a negotiation between Delhi and Rawalpindi, you try to reach out to the others within their society. We used to do it before. Ghaffar Khan used to come here all the time. ANP leaders used to come here all the time. We've cut off a lot of those links. So I would say reach out to all of them.
Why, Rajat?
I think the way this whole thing became just between, to state, G to G, I think post-1990 with Kashmir crisis, it steadily eroded. But I think it's in our hands to reclaim that engagement. And if you remember 2004-07, there were a lot of proposals. The whole idea of opening up Rajasthan border, opening of the Lahore-Amritsar bus. There was ideas of Karachi and Bombay cooperating. So there is enormous historical stuff there. A lot you can do unilaterally. But then where the domestic politics, which Suhasini talked about, complicated, but it's in our hands. If you're an economy today 10 times larger than Pakistan's, 10 times, you have tools today which you didn't exist in 1983-84. So I would say that by framing things in a cooperative way, you can call it South Asia or whatever you want to call it, there's enormous room for changing the dynamic. But the fate, what is it Shakespeare said, dear Brutus? It's in ourselves, it's not in our stars. So I would say it is unilateralism, and unilateralism using advisedly, a unilateralist strategy to transform the structure of the Western, Northwestern subcontinent. I mean, it's not that others have not tried, Americans. They tried to tell Pakistan, look, I don't know how many of you know the current Bureau of South Asia, which is in a bad name these days. It is called South Asia Central Asia Bureau. And it was set up for a specific reason in 2001 because of the Afghan crisis, where Americans thought by bringing South Asia and Central Asia together, you can crack open the India-Pak and Pak-Afghan borders. And of course, Pakistan was not ready for it. They tried very hard a trade and transit agreement between India and Pakistan, which should have helped Afghanistan. That didn't work out. So it's all been tried before. What has not been tried is the unilateralist direct attempt at changing the dynamic of the relationship.
And shaping the environment which Pakistan operates, right? Elements, I think, so you got a lot of elements for a strategy, not a Pakistan policy, a real strategy, which is made of many policies. I guess in Raja's words, it means inviting the cricketers and the cricket players and the singers while hanging out with the Baluch also. And escalating conventionally.
You were saying putting words into my mouth.
No, that's strategy, right? You have to play all those tools. You're much more powerful, and you can't just freeze the problem. You have to work on it. So
can I just say that while we are discussing the India-Pakistan, and there are so many problems with it, I think it's possible to step out of it and say, okay, if this is unfixable, is there a larger reason to fix it? And that's where South Asia comes in. That's where the idea of SAARC comes in, because it's no longer just about you and me. I can have a lot of problems with a lot of my neighbors. Am I going to just completely observe the larger context of this being a good regionalization? I say this because the world has changed in 5 years. Regionalization is the only thing I see as a secular trend across the world. Globalization is a bad word. First, because of the 2008 banking collapse, then because of COVID. You start hearing people, their immediate reaction in any conflict is to move regionally, because obviously just going on your own is not the answer.
That's what 2014 SAARC summit The multilateral agreement didn't go through because Pakistan was not part of it.
Well, then by that logic, Bhutan has also not accepted it, and Bhutan's your best friend. So my point is that we can find excuses. We can make the case that we are the injured party here, that India did not in 2019 put a unilateral 200% tariff on all Pakistani goods. We can make the case that India, despite its 10 times larger size, is actually the hurt party here. My point is, what's the larger game for India? Why isn't South Asia a strategy? When if doing the deterrence is, and all of that is very important. I don't have a quarrel with this, but I find it difficult to understand why South Asia is not that strategy. We can go and join a Central Asian outfit like SCO in 2017, right now, not long ago. Do counter-terror exercises with Pakistan at the SCO level. But we can't even go to Pakistan for a SAARC summit since 2016. I mean, I find that it's possible to find excuses for everything, but the logic is staring us in the face. We can discuss with China while their troops sit on our boundary, increasing trade 3, 4, 5 times. And we can have an economic survey actually say we want to bring in investment from China, but we will not do it with Pakistan. And we can say that within our region, we are willing to talk to the Taliban that is responsible for some of the most heinous attacks on our own diplomats. In fact, the very man accused of it is our chief interlocutor in the Taliban government today. We can speak to Maldives that has most recently kicked out our troops very unceremoniously, but here we are, External Affairs Minister is back there talking about all the projects we're going to do. We were able to forge something with Bangladesh. We're able to forge something with Nepal that has claimed territory and put it on its currency notes, despite our objections. But when it comes to Pakistan, it's like, no, this is a no-go area.
Untouchable.
Even though the South Asian logic should actually ask.
So 1 minute, Happymon, before we come back, Sanjay, to you, for you choose and pick and come in here, and then we open it up for questions. So please wave your hand. I'll start bringing in some questions. I think we are joined online also by many people. So I think there's a system to give me questions if you write them down in Zoom. So we have another 25 minutes. But Happy, 2 minutes, December 2014. A lot what Suhasini is suggesting, December 15. The visit, right, that Prime Minister, it's the same Prime Minister, it's the same political party, right? So if it is ideology, if it is something in the government that is not allowing to see the light, what went wrong in 15?
Well, you had the Indian Prime Minister inviting the SAARC leaders for the swearing-in ceremony. You had Mr. Prime Minister going to Pakistan in December. You had the Pathankot attack in 2016 January, and you had the invitation from the Indian side for the Pakistani side to come to India for a joint investigation. The Pakistani side was supposed to invite the Indian side back to Islamabad, which they never did. And that, combined with the Burhan Wani, etc., the uprising in Kashmir, that sort of convinced the Indian side that Pakistan is probably not serious about conversing with India on any of these issues, on terrorism, on joint investigation, or on reopening conversations on trade, etc., etc. I think, and the fact that the government in Pakistan at the time led by Imran Khan went about issuing stamps and politicizing what was happening in Kashmir at that point of note that we were doing all fantastic things in Kashmir at that point of time, but Pakistan, if Pakistan was serious about getting into a conversation with a new prime minister in India, they should have done more about it. But they, in my opinion, in that 1 year, they did nothing positive. Everything that it was negative. So what did you expect? Modi did give a chance for this relationship to sort of succeed in some ways, at least in the first 1.5 years. Thereafter, I think we can see what has happened. Things have sort of gone from one to the other, from surgical strikes to the stand-up strikes in Pulwama. So things have not sort of. I think he did give. I think the credit should be given to the government for taking that risk and giving that opportunity, which I don't think Pakistan took that opportunity. That's where we are.
Thanks, Happy, for recalling all that. Sanjay, over to you,
Sure.
maybe to pick and choose what you want to
Sure.
comment. I have already a variety of
Right.
questions lined up here
Okay.
and hands in the air. Over to you.
Yeah, so I'm not even competent to answer so many, many of the issues that, I'm a simple-minded economist. So what do I know?
Economists are doing coups these
Yeah.
days, so it's.
Careful, it's CSEP, we're a lot of economists.
No, in this or in amongst this panel. So the thing is that I'll first, I mean, I can't address all the questions, but as you said, pick and choose. Yeah, and I'm certainly focusing on the economic logic because it's a sort of almost like a plea that what has the alternative left us with today? After 75 years, all our politicking, our negotiations, where has it left us in terms of our bilateral relationship, right? And by extension, as Suhasini also said, the broader relationship, as I have been at pains to point out, there is a huge cost to South Asia of that relationship not working. So is it not only hurting the people of India, Pakistan, and Afghanistan, but also by extension, all of South Asia on so many fronts. So it's a like a plea to focus on the economics and see where that takes us. Okay, now, and it's very deliberate. And this issue that, okay, one thing that I know is that the moment there are signs of rapprochement, I'm not a political scientist, but I know that the moment there are signs of a rapprochement, there will be a bomb somewhere. There's going to be a strike. So why are we surprised at that, right? Why do we think that, now the talk will get derailed? That is, I mean, it's a given, right? I mean, I guess you can find out if there has ever not been a strike whenever we have been close to any kind of rapprochement, right? Okay. Then this issue you raised about, I think the dependence part, I think Happymon raised it. So it's about mutual dependence, right? So that's the way to have, so it's not a monopsonistic or a monopolistic relationship, right? Neither is the buyer too important, so you're in a two-way relationship that keeps the incentives grounded, whether it is power trade or trade in goods or trade in services. I think that's what that's in my view the way to go. And for example, Nepal, when it was this export of power to India, Nepal said that, well, we don't want to export too much power to India because India will have that buying power. It could cut it off, and then where we will have stranded power out there. And so, there's a talk, okay, let's bring in Bangladesh into the relationship to make it more politically acceptable. And then we are now also talking of bilateral. Yeah, India is exporting, but in time, Nepal will be the much bigger exporter of energy to India. And India will, over time, that will peter out to probably zero. So what's different today, I think, from a Pakistani perspective, where I think the economics is very important, right? They are in the midst of their worst economic crisis since independence, protracted crisis, okay? And this is what I wrote in my last year's piece. Their engagement with India will give them now much more than it would have in the past. Not just from a trade point of view, it will help partly address their issues of crony capitalism, which they have huge problems with. You get exposure to such a massive market next door. I think there could be some shakeout in their domestic market. Energy prices, some of the highest in the world in Pakistan. India has got stranded energy capacity. It can export it so easily to Pakistan. We had these big strikes on the other side of Kashmir recently, and flour prices went through the roof. India would have been a natural partner to just send wheat flour across there and would have helped to dampen all of that, the strikes and the huge, some of the biggest uprisings we've seen there, demonstrations we've seen on the other side of Kashmir. So I think there is, from a Pakistani perspective, there is a big and growing constituency who wants to trade. And the Prime Minister, Shehbaz Sharif, not just Nawaz, Shehbaz Sharif has openly said it. So actually they believe, from what I have read in editorials, they believe that India is not responding. They have said it openly. We have called again and again, but India is not responding to us. That's what they're saying. At least,
No, I think, you're mistaken. When they say we want to engage India, they say, please talk to us on Kashmir. Let's take all this as that is the problem. It's not engaging for sake of engagement. They're saying, talk to us on Kashmir. Let's fix the Kashmir problem and everything will be fine. Take our word for it. Let's start talking Kashmir. The rest will follow. That's what they're saying. I'm not criticizing them. I'm saying you must understand their position. You're not.
okay, but I'm referring to the limited point on trade. And the calls that I have seen from Shahbaz Sharif or Ishaq,
That was ruled out, no,
they
by
were-
the army. So that's where the problem was. I mean.
So anyway, but the point I'm making is they have a huge economic crisis, and there are growing constituencies who realize that they will, India engagement will benefit. And I agree. I was going to make the point on unilateralism. I agree there with you, Raj, totally. I think we can go beyond that. So there you can use the power of trade. Why should we just, we can declare, again, it's our domestic constituency. We open up and go back to pre-2019 MFN, give them MFN treatment. Nothing's going to happen. There's barely, they will increase their exports from $13 million to $400 million. It's not even a drop in the ocean for Indian imports, right? But it could be a huge change from a mindset point of view from the other side. Okay, India is being, finally, they mean business. So unilateral. So the Dubai trade is already happening. There's, that's continuing because we pretend, you close your eyes that, it's actually made in Dubai. And so it goes, but not much comes in. It's mostly India trade going the other way. And I agree totally on the regionalization issue with Suhasini. That I think the world is moving towards blocks and, there's this nearshoring and friendshoring and all of that. But I think we have this opportunity from an economic perspective, from the so-called China Plus One strategy, the global search for new partners from an economic point of view. And I think there a South Asian approach will certainly pay much better dividends than a pure India-centered play.
Thank you, Sanjay. A lot to unpack there, particularly the idea of what can be done. I think let's focus on that. Ria Sinha and myself who work here in the foreign policy, and we benefited a lot from your work, Sanjay. We're thinking what can be done without Pakistan. So in line with you, Raj, also saying what can be done, you're big now, you can do things. So you can wait for the sun to be brighter in the future so you're ready. For example, integrated checkposts, right? The first ICP was built in Atari 13 years ago.
2010, yeah.
Yeah, none more have been built, right? It's all on the other borders. So let them build them, have them ready. Maybe in 10 years, it takes 10 years to build those things. So
Just those body scanners.
there's a lot that can be done in the meantime. So Amit, we have another 15 minutes. So let's get more questions in. Happy, I know you want to come in, but let's, in the interest of people who've joined us, and I want to give priority to those who've joined us here in the office at CSEP. So Amit, over to you. And I have 3 more online.
In time-honored tradition, can I have a comment disguised as a question in true academic?
And whatever you want in 2 minutes.
Okay.
I know.
Okay. So one thing that I was just thinking, because we started the whole discussion with the discussion of, does such a moment exist, right? Is to try and understand whether the moment exists or not. We can discuss that later. Is to identify what would need to take place for those conditions to exist, that Overton window or whatever, right? And I also sense from the discussion that there is a tendency to view our history very cyclically, which may have some credence to it, given the way our history tends to operate cyclically, but also understand that we are at a certain historical juncture where, let's say, Pakistan, the army is facing probably its biggest crisis of legitimacy since 71, and that might just be one of the so-called precursors of change. On the Indian side, this is my personal opinion, again, unsubstantiated, that we are looking at the moment of exhaustion of the 1991 project, of the neoliberal project in a certain sense. And what these changes, how we can maneuver these changes towards, the end point that Dr. Kathuria wants to go to, right? So that would be my comment, right? So to identify what are these underlying conditions of change which can lead us to that Overton window.
Thanks, Amit, for liberating us from the prisons of the past, or at least pushing us. General Mehta, I think you're in the first row, please.
Yeah,
All right. I'll just take a minute to give under what background I am speaking.
So
Uh,
on record, so
Beg your pardon?
is it
Yeah,
recorded?
we're recording. We're live. Yeah.
Yeah. No, we have convened the India-Pakistan Track 2 dialogue as the convener, General Mehta, from 2013 till 2019, when COVID stopped it. This was uninterrupted dialogue. There are two issues here. One is to go.
2 minutes, please.
Yeah. One is to go beyond the government, this unilateralist. So there are a lot of what Raja has talked about. In our track 2, number of transformative projects were considered, not just music, joint media. We had owners of Pakistani media and Arun Puri, for example, who was there at this India Today group. We had a joint arbitration council idea. We had joint music and a number of other ideas which were called transformative projects. So you're going beyond the government. The other approach, which I think needs to be cracked, and which is that India can't live in denial about political issues. Happymon is saying that India is not ready to discuss Kashmir. I mean, who's India not being ready? You can't unilaterally go over a United Nations Security Council resolution, which only on 7th of this month has been reiterated by the spokesperson of the United Nations. And by your obduracy, you have now brought the strategic factor, you have brought Pakistan and China on the same page. Pakistan, they are telling you that we tell China you are acting unilaterally.
Thank you. Yeah.
Unilaterally, but we are acting unilaterally by changing the status of Kashmir. Anyway, since you want me to stop, I'll stop. But I think there is a case for trade. And that case is not just through Dubai or Singapore. It is something that you've got to keep trying. And it's your track 2 has got shut. Even your track 2 has got shut because terror and talks can't go together. Well, terror hasn't stopped. In fact, terror has increased. It is ridiculous, this policy about terror and talks. And the last thing is, I think, our policy of not engaging the Pakistan army. The National Security Advisor will go to Naypyidaw and talk to the greatest genocide maker, military leader, the Burmese leader. They won't talk to the Pakistan army. I said, what logic is this?
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. Always good to see you. So let me just distribute this briefly and push you all in different direction, in the direction that make you least comfortable. That's what I'm going to do with all of you. One, online, Idam Ashraf, who's actually contributing to our China and South Asia project, with a fascinating study on how the Chinese give awards to the Pakistanis under CPEC. She's asking, what has India exactly gained with this period of shutdown? Raja, that one goes to you, right? So sorry, this one goes to Suhasini, actually. That's one. What has India gained from 2019 onwards, from this sort of shutting down the Pakistan policy, not investing in trade? She's saying if the gains of trade, like Sanjay argues, are so big, what has India gained from it?
Well, I think Happy's already spoken about it, that there's a kind
in your view, what do you believe India has? Nothing?
Well,
Zero?
as I said, if you're risk averse, then nothing ventured, nothing gained. So, and frankly, not that much lost either, is the thinking. But I start to look around and as General Mehta said, all the supposed gains, that is, there's no need to talk to them. because, see how we've controlled the Kashmir problem, we've controlled terrorism, we are dealing with the rest of the neighborhood. BIMSTEC is much better. BBIN is okay. So all the things that were the notional gains of let's isolate Pakistan, and let's not forget, this is a government that made its official policy, reiterated by the foreign secretary, who's now our external affairs minister, that our desire was to isolate Pakistan. I don't think Pakistan's isolated. I don't think terrorism is down. In fact, just today, the father of one of the soldiers said, how long are we going to keep losing our boys? It doesn't look very different 5 years later. I don't think the Kashmir problem has been resolved, and we can get into this on another years from now. And that is the LOC is going to be the international boundary. I don't think that there is a way around this. And I don't think that the formulations of 2001 to 2006, which Mr. Sati Lamba has written at great length about in his book before he died, in any way change it. I mean, what he wrote then is exactly true now, that you are not going to see a solution that is vastly different from what we have today, right?
Thanks.
So I just think that in terms of game, we have just lost time. That's it.
Raja, to Amit's question, are we being excessively skeptical, negative, prisoners of the past? Can there be change? Where's the possibility?
Again, I think, look at the actual negotiating record, what's happened in the last 5 years. This idea that India is not willing to negotiate with Pakistan, I mean, that's not accurate. After all, India negotiated a ceasefire agreement 2021 February by the Backchannel, whatever channel it is. What came out was a public. What is it? The two-line statement. There'll be a ceasefire, and both sides will resume talks on the core issues, which means Kashmir. That India was ready to do.
Well, the Indian Army disputes that.
No, but that's okay. They can dispute. But the core issue, moment to mention core issue of interest to both sides. But Mr. Imran Khan said, in fact, assumption at that time was some trade will take place. High commissioners will be restored. So that brings you to the civilian question that actually General Bajwa actually was favoring a relaxation of the relationship in spite of what happened on August 5th, 2019. But the civilian leadership at the time, Mr. Imran Khan, was opposed to it. And at that, it got stopped. So today, when you say, why don't we start talking? Even today, the Pakistani formal position is, we can't talk to you till you reverse what happened on August 5th, 2019. That is the formal position. To keep saying that they're ready to talk to you, that's a goodwill. When they say, reverse it, come back, and we'll go back to where we were in the 90s. And that's where the problem is. So therefore, I would say, Pakistan has to change. Look, I'm saying, can we incentivize it in different forms? I think we've tried different things. I mean, I would say that's why. Let's do what we can to improve trade. Let's try to do what we can do unilaterally on the visas and a whole range of things we can facilitate. But they have to make the decision whether they can hold back on economic cooperation till something fundamental changes on the Kashmir policy. And I think that's where we are stuck.
Thank you, Raj. Thanks, Amit, for bringing a bit of idealism out of the panel also, and what's possible beyond the art of the past and getting out of it. There's a lot of realists on this panel, so it's good to think of what's actually possible beyond what has happened in the past. Happy, there's one question in particular from you, from online. Jaydeep Gadavi asks, what type of borders should we think of with Pakistan? There's a variety of borders, heavy militarized ones, LOC that you know in and out better than few people in this country. There are open borders. I can think of the India-Nepal border, on which we've done a lot of work, where the question comes up in government all the time. What should we do with this border, right? Because you have to keep terror, security threats out, but you also want to trade. So what type of borders can we imagine between India and Pakistan in future?
Well, I'm a big firm believer in the 4-point formula that was being negotiated between the Indian side and the Pakistani side. Mr. Lamba on this side, and at least two or three of Pakistani interlocutors. I think they
remind us of those 4 points briefly. What is it?
It's basically about the people going back and forth between the two sides of Jammu and Kashmir, trade between the two sides of Jammu and Kashmir, consultative mechanisms to manage affairs of the two sides of Jammu and Kashmir, and
autonomy on both sides.
Identifying regions and
less security and
so that's going back and forth. So Now, in 2007, I think May, June, they agreed to a certain working paper, and that working paper apparently exists in both sides, in Islamabad and in Pakistan. Mr. Lamba has written about it, Kathuria has written about it, several others have written about it. I myself am writing a book on that. I've done about 35 interviews, but the point that I'm trying to make is that's where we should get. But are we there yet? No. I just want to make one more point about the issue of unilateralism. I think that's an interesting point. Unilateralism, several people sort of insisted on that. I think that's a great idea. You know, so we've also been doing some track tours with Raja and Suhasini, part of it. And once we reached out to the government in Delhi and asked for some suggestions as to what we should take to some of these meetings. And we were told that there is desire in this government to initiate a conversation on the possibility of Wagatari trade. And we took that to the Pakistani side during the conversation, and they said, you know, you guys want to sort of tie us in this conflict management knot. We are not interested. We are not interested in this small piece there, that small piece there. You will tomorrow talk about the drones, then you talk about drugs, then you talk about this management.
And that's also true, by the way. What we have done
Which is absolutely
with the LOC trade in Kashmir is exactly what we have done.
So the catch-22 is precisely this. The Indian side says, we are not willing to talk about the political question of Kashmir. Absolutely, sir. And if we do, we will talk about POK to start with, right? So that's where the Indian side of the argument. On the Pakistani side says, everything else is basically taking us for a ride, you know, and sort of leading up the garden, but we are not interested. Let's start with Kashmir. I think this, unless until we are able to resolve this catch-22, no unilateralism is going to work because there's simply no interest in that. One final 10-second point, again, referring to what Jan Mehta said earlier. So I think from 2020 onwards, there has been conversation between the Indian side and the Pakistani army. And the Pakistani army, I think, has appreciated that a lot, precisely because at a time when Pakistan army is down and out with very little legitimacy, who reached out to them? The Indian side reached out to them and gave them a semblance of legitimacy. And that one of the reasons why we had a 2021 ceasefire agreement, and that continues to persist to this day, is precisely because the Indian establishment has taken the Pakistani army on board that. But it is not something that will last forever. And it has, I think, inbuilt difficulties, as it were.
Great. Thanks, Happy. Unpacking a lot. Sanjay, you're getting a lot of things. This has been a very thought-provoking paper. And I think we never received so many questions. I'm going to share these with you later because you'll have a lot of emailing to do. But one to you, Sanjay, would be Malik Moin's question, saying that India is, decoupling from a larger Chinese economic ecosystem, refusing to join RCEP. But how reasonable is it from India to expect Pakistan to ignore that logic when it comes to itself? Right? India is staying out of RCEP on basic of a logical geopolitics with China. And does it even make sense, and therefore to expect Pakistan to trade with India? Or will there be similar arguments in Pakistan these days saying we can't depend, there are geopolitical concerns, we shouldn't trade too much with India?
Yeah, so, actually, India is the decoupling is talk, right? India, China. It's not actually happening in practice, Malik. So you know that in practice, China is back to being India's largest trading partner. It's always 1 and 2 with the US, but by far the largest source of imports. Now they're talking, fast tracking visas for Chinese technicians. There have been articles in The Economist, in the Economic Survey, and in the Financial Times. 3 good pieces on why India needs China today, right? So this decoupling talk is very, very, very premature. Yes, it's a long-term goal, but I think India needs Chinese technology, Chinese imports more than it ever. Ironically, in fact, if India wants to be the next player in China plus one, it needs China to become the China plus one. So how China views that in the longer term, I don't know, but certainly. So I think by the same logic, and I'm talking about, I think with Pakistan, India, again, this not to be too hostage to the other. I think this mutual dependency should be brought in. Bangladesh-India trade, I mean, it's hugely obviously skewed in favor of India, but that's because Bangladesh gets a lot of essential raw materials, imports, technology, and all that. Similar relationship can be built up over time. Pakistan can, can become a larger and larger exporter to India. But I think, rivals do trade a lot with each other. China-Taiwan trade is booming, Japan-China trade, there's huge amount. So I think I keep continuing to say that we need to separate trade from, because I still think it's the lowest hanging fruit, because it gives immediate welfare benefits to the people. And as I said, that if on the other side of Kashmir, all that violence and demonstrations, they could have been quelled, because inflation was the biggest issue there in that demonstrations.
Thank you, Sanjay. So in the interest of time, I'm going to close it down in 6 minutes with your permission, but I think you had one question here from the audience. Over to you, maybe.
Yeah, hi.
You
So,
could identify you briefly. Just mention your name, yourself.
It's working.
Yeah, it's working.
okay, yeah. So I'm Sanjay Gupta. I'm an independent analyst on regional cooperation, and I've been part of Track to Dialogue. I mean, on the Indus River, the water, and my experience has been Track to doesn't work between India and Pakistan. I mean, for whatever this thing, it all goes back to the same thing of one extreme position taken on the other. I mean, only track one, according to me, I mean, is really going to work between these two countries. In South Asia, that has really worked the most. Even if you look at current cooperation, India, Nepal, India, Bhutan, Bangladesh, India, Nepal, I mean, it's all really government. I mean, we are not really seeing great things happening on this track 1.5 or track, I mean, 2, Though, according to me, I think one of the things is to really go down rather than treating India and Pakistan as entities, is to really look at the states which are most affected by the conflict are also states which have the least say. They elect the least number of MPs. I mean, they are the ones probably providing the least number of officers, whether it is the foreign service, it is the, the administrative service, but they do provide the most number of soldiers. And that is, I think, where the whole issue really lies, is we are not having states talk to each other, like on the Pakistani side, Punjab talking to Punjab or Punjab, I mean, and I think what you alluded to, Dr. Raja Mohan, the mothers of the 2 medal winners really showed how close people feel from those border states. And I include Haryana and I include Himachal in it. I'm from Haryana. And I know, I mean, my daughter's name is Noor, and I'm a Hindu, so-called. I mean, I don't practice, okay. But for us, Noor is a word we use frequently. For us, it's culture. It's not a Muslim name, understand? So we speak what we call Hindustan. We don't speak Hindi. And I think that this whole thing of India-Pakistan entity is too large to be tackled. I think it's much easier to look at really the border states. And that's where I think the opportunity lies. The people still feel very close. The biggest so-called sufferers of terrorism are still people who feel emotionally, politically, culturally closest to each other. And I think that is something we are totally missing out on, allowing the constituencies from beyond those to really determine everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Sanjay. So on that note, and
I just
probably
want to give
10 more questions here, but I won't bring them up. But I'll mention them briefly at the end, we're closing down. But yeah, any last thoughts from you? And we'll end with Sanjay, but maybe Raja in reverse order.
On the paradiplomacy, what is called state-to-state, subnational level, I mean, that's an idea that's around and it's practiced by many countries. We tried it in the India-Pakistan case, 2004 to 7, I think. Amrinder Singh was the chief minister of Punjab, and the Chaudhary brothers were running other Punjab. There was an attempt to create this Punjab dialogue. There was also World Punjabi Games, World Punjabi Culture. So actually, you tried to bring that together. But again, didn't last. See, the idea that you can transcend Rawalpindi Delhi axis by reaching out Lahore, Amritsar, Bombay, Karachi, it's a great idea. But the dominance of the central and the veto power has repeatedly come back. And I think that's why, can we find other ways of doing it? That is to let people meet. I mean, that's where I think visa policies and others can come. Let the people connect beyond the state to state or G to G. But I would say, again, I think India will have to take the lead because we have a bigger stake in rearranging the regional order in favor of more cooperation. If that is the case, then I think we must find ways to support paradiplomacy rather than just simply accept Pakistan's veto. So, and our own vetoes have often stymied a lot of times what was possible.
Thank you. Reverse order, so that makes it you happy.
Two quick points. One about track two. I agree. I think the big formats that we used to have, 20 people, 25 people, that doesn't work. I think what does work is that a very precise clinical agenda and domain experts talking to each other and communicating this back to their respective governments. We tried military to military conversations, for example, 3-4 people from either side, so there's a sense of purpose, there's clarity, they come briefed and they go back and brief. That does work. Of course, and then you can have other formats. For example, you can have, just to sort of link up what you said later on with the whole track two argument, which is if you want to get people involved, I think you will need to have students going back and forth. You will need to have musicians and others. That needs to happen. But I would not sort of depend too much on that. Public opinion is fickle, whether we like it or not. And foreign policy is not really made by people on the streets. And today they will say something, tomorrow they will say something else. I think there has to be a lot more thinking and consideration about some of these things. It is easy to say that the two Punjabs will make peace. I mean, ask me, I don't see much peace that has been built by Punjab in the last 75 years. So I'm a little skeptical about that, but I would recommend the importance of epistemic communities, like students and like journalists and people of that kind. There's a lot more, I think, responsibility that comes with it. But back to you.
Thank you, everyone. Sanjay, over to you.
Yeah, so I don't have much more to add. I think one thing is that I want to agree very much. I was going to say the longer term, right? So we have to think about not just the short term, the longer term, and the education, the exchange on the education side. I think that's critical for young minds who understand things in a proper perspective without any baggage. So I think exchange on that would be very important for a future that is different from today's. And the other thing is one point that Raj talked about, the face-saving part. I think, and I don't know if I mentioned it in my paper, but I think one face-saving which I've heard from the Pakistani side is some form of reversal. I mean, it's the Article 370, no. But the state elections themselves, just doing the state elections,
And
I think
statehood.
Statehood, right? That itself, I think they could live with and they could work around that and give them an opportunity to everybody.
That's the only hope we are hanging by. That is the September-October elections in Kashmir. That creates a little bit of space in which the two sides could. So that's the last thread.
Pakistan never recognized 370 anyway. So.
Yeah, and then I think I do want to say that the scope for unilateralism for India, I just want to stress, although I said, is huge, right? As Raj said, also, we are an economy now, it's actually more than 10x if you look at purchasing power terms. So there is huge scope. And the needs of Pakistan are just massive, right? And I cannot underscore how badly the country has been let down by its economic policy makers. I'm very sorry that they've had to actually deal with such poor economic leadership. Apart from everything else, just pure economic leadership has been disastrous, right? So I think they need any unilateral help will be very good for them. And I think I am certainly a believer in that, as Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee once said, that we need, in Hindi, he said in Urdu, that we need a stable and prosperous Pakistan. India desires that, and India will gain benefit from that.
Good. On that note, Sanjay, let me just thank all of you for joining. Suhasini, please forgive me if we close it down on time. Well beyond time, but there'll be coffee, tea, and cookies outside to talk about the future. But let me give a shout out to the people who've asked questions, phenomenal questions, actually. Priyanka Mary Francis asked about the security costs of connectivity. Afrina from Islamabad asks about the Taliban stuck between Central and South Asia. Happymon and Raja, maybe it's something you want to talk about. I mean, how can we talk about CASA, Sanjay, if there's a regime that India does not recognize? Ana Ballesteros from Spain asking what could be the ideological incentives for Pakistan to work with India. Since Pakistan is so driven by ideology, civilization, India too these days, what could India do on that front to sort of create a narrative that has space for them? Manav Rai asks about how the Chinese have built and invested into the CPEC corridor, and if there's any future to that, or if that's been a total disaster. Raja, I think you're negative on that one, and I think Pakistan's economic situation speaks to that. Seema Khan asks again about CPEC. Why can't India use CPEC to its own benefit to connect with Central Asia or parts of China? Anvesha Rai Chaudhary asks about, can we really give up Kashmir when it comes to dealing with Pakistan? Is that something we can just sideline and divide? And finally, maybe the nicest note we can end this on, Maitri asks and says, trust grows on existing trust. That's sort of a vicious circle, but how do we begin that cycle of trust? So thank you all for being here. Sanjay, for bringing us here, and the discussants for being here at CSEP today. Thank you all.